Welcome to the Church Ready podcast. Expect honest conversations for church leaders navigating AI threats to the labor-based tithe model, so you can begin the conversation your leadership team needs to have. Let's join your hosts now.
Today we are diving into a reality that I think most church leaders actively dread, right? The financial spreadsheets.
Oh, absolutely. The dreaded spreadsheets.
Yeah. And to do this, we are pulling directly from two frameworks, the budget leak detector and stage 1 of the resilience roadmap.
That's right. And our mission for this is to really prove to you, the pastor or the church leader sitting with us right now, that you do not need an advanced finance degree to know if your church is financially healthy.
Right, totally.
You really only need to track 5 or 6 clear, vital indicators.
And we need those indicators because typically when you want a medical diagnosis, you expect absolute precision.
Like an X-ray.
Exactly. If you break your arm, the X-ray shows a jagged white line, the doctor points to it, and the path forward is obvious.
You just set the bone.
Right. But when you step into the world of church finances, that X-ray machine is completely shattered. You're staring at rows of designated accounts, restricted funds, general ledgers.
And it just feels completely overwhelming.
It really does. Something might be wrong with the organization's health, but you just can't find that jagged white line.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. And we are looking at these metrics against a very specific, rapidly approaching backdrop.
It is.
We're entering an economic era where artificial intelligence is actively threatening the middle-class jobs of the very congregations you shepherd.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we want to prepare for a massive external economic shift like AI, common sense says we first have to look inside the house, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to know if our current storehouse is actually secure. You simply cannot build long-term resilience on a fractured foundation.
You really can't.
Okay.
And that is why the very first metric you need to track is entirely internal. We call it the leak rate.
The leak rate.
Yeah. The formula is actually quite straightforward.
Yeah.
You take your total annual leaks, divide that by your annual operating budget, and then multiply by 100 to get your percentage.
So we're basically measuring money that is vanishing without us even realizing it. What kind of benchmarks are we looking at here?
Well, a leak rate of 0 to 5% is excellent. That represents top-tier, highly intentional financial stewardship.
Okay, that makes sense.
And a 5 to 10% leak rate is typical for a well-managed church. But, and here's the wake-up call we found in the data, the average church is actually leaking 15 to 20% of its entire operating budget every single year.
Wait, hold on. 15 to 20%.
Yeah, it's staggering.
If I'm leading a church with a $500,000 annual budget, you're telling me we could be losing $75,000 to $100,000 a year.
Every single year.
Just slipping through the cracks.
Yes. For many congregations, it translates to tens of thousands of dollars annually wasted.
Oh, wow. It reminds me of a city dealing with low municipal water pressure. The reactive approach is to just run the pumps harder, build a bigger reservoir, or, in a church's case, preach a 5-week sermon series on radical generosity to increase the flow.
Right, just ask for more money.
Exactly. But if you have a cracked main line running underneath the street, you are just pumping expensive treated water right into the dirt.
That is exactly what is happening. The generosity of your congregation is being absorbed by structural inefficiency.
But let's get incredibly practical here. If I am a pastor drowning in sermon prep, late-night counseling sessions, and hospital visits, I'm not going to sit down and audit our graphic design subscriptions.
Sure.
I just don't have the bandwidth. That sounds like a massive administrative distraction from actual ministry. But wait, are we telling pastors to micromanage graphic design subscriptions?
I completely understand that reaction. It feels like micromanagement.
But this isn't about asking the lead pastor to become a penny pincher. It is about a principle we call clarity before action.
Okay.
What's fascinating here is that these leaks are invisible, precisely because departments tend to operate in complete silos. Think about a typical church staff structure.
Oh, I know it well. The worship team buys a subscription to Planning Center. The main communications director sets up a $150 a month MailChimp account. Meanwhile, the youth ministry has their own credit card.
And they are expensing a separate constant contact account to email parents.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And no one is looking at the master ledger to realize we are paying 3 different tech companies to send out emails.
Precisely. Or you're paying for Canva Pro and Adobe Creative Cloud and heavily bloated church management software when you only use like 10% of the features.
That adds up so fast.
It does. Fixing these high-impact, low-difficulty leaks is really about reclaiming margin. When you pull a 90-day expense report and eliminate those redundancies, that $10,000 you save isn't just a spreadsheet victory.
Right, it's real money.
It is immediate liquid funding for benevolence. That is mission money you already had, but we're just giving to software conglomerates.
Reclaiming the generosity that was already given. I love that framework. So we stop the internal bleeding first. We audit the software overlaps. We consolidate the tech stack. But once you optimize the digital footprint, you realize the biggest line item on a church budget isn't digital at all. It's physical, which means we have to talk about the building itself.
We do. Software subscriptions are annoying leaks, but the largest financial drain on a church is often the very thing the congregation takes most pride in. And that leads us to our second vital indicator, the building utilization rate.
Which is all about the physical space.
Yes. This metric is designed to expose hidden opportunity costs.
Okay, what is the formula for this one?
You take the total number of hours your building is actively used for ministry in a given week, and you divide it by 168.
Right, because a building is this for 168 hours a week, not just the 4 or 5 hours we actively program on a Sunday morning.
Exactly. The benchmark here is crucial. If your utilization rate is under 30%, it represents a massive, often ignored opportunity cost.
Wow, under 30%.
Yeah. You're paying for commercial property insurance, baseline utilities, heating and cooling, and ongoing maintenance for rooms that sit completely empty and silent 70% of the time.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it requires a total mindset shift. It's like buying a brand new, highly expensive 15-passenger van, right? You pay the monthly note, you pay commercial insurance on it, you replace the tires, you keep the gas tank full.
Right.
But you only drive it solo to the grocery store once a week. In any other context, we would say that makes absolutely no financial sense.
It is the perfect analogy for how most congregations treat a multi-million-dollar facility. A massive fellowship hall that sits empty from Monday morning to Wednesday evening and then again until Sunday morning is not neutral space.
No, it's not.
It is actively costing you money. But if you flip the perspective, that empty fellowship hall could be a $10,000 to $50,000 annual revenue opportunity if it were leveraged properly.
Let's talk about the friction of actually doing that, though. I mean, leasing out space sounds great in a book, but in reality, church boards push back on this constantly.
Oh, all the time.
There is a deeply ingrained theology of space. We dedicate these sanctuaries. So the idea of renting out the fellowship hall to a tech startup on a Tuesday or hosting a community co-working space, it feels entirely secular to a lot of elders.
I hear that constantly.
Plus, you have to deal with zoning laws, you risk your property tax exemptions in some municipalities, and frankly, you have to deal with Tuesday renters spilling coffee on the carpet you need pristine for Sunday.
Those are all incredibly valid roadblocks, you know. Zoning laws and tax implications do require careful legal navigation. And yes, sharing space creates operational friction.
Well, a lot of friction.
But let's weigh that friction against the cost of avoidance. If you are terrified of a coffee stain, so you leave a $3 million asset empty while struggling to pay your youth pastor a living wage, your priorities are misaligned.
That is a gut punch.
The goal isn't necessarily to become a commercial landlord.
Yeah.
Could you lease the space at a deep discount to a local nonprofit whose mission aligns with yours?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Right. Could you host an after-school program that serves the neighborhood while covering your utility overhead? This metric forces you to view the building not as a sacred museum, but as an active community asset.
All right, so let's map our progress. We've optimized the internal operations. The building is working for us, the digital leaks are plugged, the house is entirely in order.
Right.
But an optimized building still requires revenue to keep the lights on, and that revenue comes from the congregation. This is where we have to open the front doors and look at the incoming storm.
Because patching your plumbing doesn't matter if the well outside runs completely dry. We have to transition from internal efficiency to external vulnerability.
And the external vulnerability we are facing right now is that artificial intelligence is radically accelerating job displacement. And we aren't just talking about factory automation or robotics anymore.
No, not at all.
AI is actively coming for administrative roles, logistics, middle management, customer service, and knowledge-based professional careers.
It is coming directly for the roles held by the middle-class families who form the financial backbone of the modern church. Which brings us to metric number 3. Top donor exposure.
Okay, what does that look like?
This is a pure vulnerability test. We find that many churches suffer from extreme donor concentration risk. They might follow the traditional 80-20 rule, or in many cases, it's actually worse.
Worse how?
They rely on just 10 to 15 families to provide 70 to 80% of their entire operating budget.
Wow, so the vital, terrifying question here is, what happens to your church's ability to operate if 30% of your top 20 donors are automated out of their careers in the next 24 months?
Yes.
And right alongside that is metric number 4, the financial runway calculation, meaning how many months can the church continue to operate if tithe income suddenly drops by 50%?
Exactly. The runway is your absolute survival timeline. Without knowing that number, you are flying blind into an economic hurricane.
I have to pause here. I genuinely struggle with this concept. If I sit in an elder meeting and we pull up a list of our top 20 giving families, and I'm actively calculating the probability of them losing their livelihoods to an algorithm,
Yeah.
I feel like a cynical hedge fund manager betting against my own people. It feels gross. Where's the faith in that? Aren't we just viewing our congregation as walking ATM machines?
I am so glad you brought that up, because that moral discomfort is one of the most common internal conflicts pastors face when doing this specific work.
It just feels so clinical.
It does. But if we pull back and look at the underlying reality, this isn't cynical at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the absolute core of what we call the shepherd's double burden.
A shepherd's double burden, I'm guessing that means you're carrying the weight of the institution's survival in one hand and the emotional, spiritual survival of your congregation in the other.
Exactly. You are being asked to lead a resilient organization while simultaneously shepherding human beings walking through profound uncertainty. Those two demands arrive at your door at the exact same moment.
Right.
Let's put a face on this. Imagine a congregate, let's call him John. John has been a logistics manager for 15 years. He's a faithful giver. Suddenly, an AI logistics platform eliminates his department.
Man.
John isn't just losing his paycheck. He is facing a profound mental health toll, a devastating grief over his loss of identity, massive relational and marital strain, and acute community isolation.
He is completely unmoored.
He is unmoored. Yeah. And who is John going to turn to for stability? He is going to turn to you, his pastor.
Yeah.
But here is the hard mathematical truth: financial margin is pastoral margin. Yeah. If your church has a 2-week financial runway and you're giving drops because people like John are losing their jobs, the church suddenly goes into survival mode.
Oh, I see where this is going.
You, as the pastor, are now panicking about paying the mortgage and whether you can feed your own family. You do not have the mental, emotional, or financial capacity to sit in the grief with John.
Wow. Okay, the pieces are connecting for me.
Yeah.
Instead of the church being a supportive, resilient safety net, providing benevolence and care when John needs it most, the church becomes just another stressed out institution scrambling and asking John to maintain his pledge when he has nothing left to give.
Precisely. You calculate the worst case scenario today so you can be the best case support system tomorrow. Calculating your runway and donor exposure isn't about protecting the institution's wealth.
It's about ensuring the institution survives so it can actually do the ministry it was built for.
Exactly. The pastor who builds resilience now is the pastor who still has the capacity to be present when their congregation faces the crisis.
That completely shifts the paradigm from corporate cynicism to deep pastoral care.
Yeah.
But let's bring this out of the hypothetical future and into the immediate present. Because this economic shift isn't just a sci-fi scenario slated for 2030, the way people earn money has already fundamentally changed, which means the way they give has changed. Pastors are feeling this right now.
They absolutely are. And that leads us to our 5th metric, giving volatility variance.
Giving volatility variance. Break down what that looks like in practice.
Well, if you look at historical giving patterns over the last few decades, a healthy church could expect a month-to-month giving variance of maybe 5 to 10%.
Right. The summer slumps when people went on vacation were predictable. The end-of-year generosity surges in December were predictable.
Exactly. The entire church budget model was built on the rhythm of the predictable salaried American paycheck. But that rhythm is fracturing. Today, we are seeing church giving variance spike to 15, 20, sometimes 25% month to month.
A 25% swing from one month to the next is terrifying if your building costs and staff salaries are fixed. What is the mechanism driving that spike?
It is the rapid restructuring of the labor market. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that 36% of workers are now engaging in gig, freelance, or contract work.
That is a huge percentage.
It is. When a congregate shifts from a stable salaried position to project-based work, their personal income volatility swings wildly, often 30 to 50% from month to month.
Right. So instead of getting a steady $5,000 paycheck every single month, a graphic designer or an independent consultant might land a huge contract and make $8,000 in October.
Yeah.
But then the market dries up and they only make $1,000 in November.
Exactly. And if they don't get paid in November, they can't tithe in November. The predictable, salary-based tithing patterns that finance committees have relied on for 50 years are fundamentally breaking down. The baseline assumption of steady clockwork income is just gone.
So what does this all mean for the leader listening right now? It means that if you are a pastor or a finance committee sitting down this week to build your budget projections for next year, and you're using baseline assumptions from 2019, you are building your house on quicksand. You simply cannot fund a modern church, assuming a 1990s labor market.
You absolutely cannot. And this reality brings us to the synthesis of everything we've discussed. Tracking these metrics is the defining difference between a reactive leader and a visionary steward.
The reactive leader is the one caught off guard. They treat AI and economic disruption only as a distant threat until it arrives.
Right, they just wait for it.
They wait for the financial pressure to hit the general ledger, and then they scramble. They try to cut costs in a panic without a system and without the community infrastructure to actually support their people.
But the visionary steward recognizes that you don't have to choose between solving today's budget problems and preparing for tomorrow's economic disruptions.
You can do both.
Yes. By knowing your vital numbers, your leak rate, your building utilization, your donor exposure, your runway, and your volatility variance, you move from playing defense to playing offense. You reclaim the margin hidden in your operations today so you can build the pastoral infrastructure you'll desperately need tomorrow.
It's about having the courage to look at the murky waters and bring clarity to them. And listen, if you are driving or running or doing dishes right now and thinking, I need to calculate these metrics, but I don't know where to start, we have built the exact tool you need to do it. The Budget Leak Detector is available in the Church Ready Resource Hub. To gain access, download our free pastoral report when AI replaces your tither's job. There is a link in the show notes.
The tool walks you through every single step we've discussed today. It gives you the clear formulas and the worksheets to find those hidden thousands of dollars in your budget this week, taking the anxiety out of the process.
It's intensely practical, it's actionable, and it's free. But as we wrap up our time together, we want to leave you with something much bigger than just numbers and worksheets.
Yes, we spent this entire deep dive talking about metrics, spreadsheets, gig economies, and leaky budgets. But I want you to consider this. What if the AI disruption that is currently threatening your church's traditional budget is actually the very catalyst God will use to force the modern church to strip away its bloated, consumer-driven programming?
Wow.
What if this immense economic pressure is exactly what returns the church to its original first-century design, a raw, highly resilient organism of true community belonging?
That is the ultimate paradigm shift. When the spreadsheet breaks, maybe it's just the perfect time to build a better boat. Keep asking the hard questions, and until next time.
If you are a pastor or church leader, download the free pastoral report when AI replaces your tither's jobs, so you can begin the conversations your leadership team needs to have. There's a link in the description. Until next time, lead well, steward wisely, and trust deeply.